Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Good to really contemplate the Heart Sutra. I think over the years I've taught it maybe 4 times, and I'm really enjoying contemplating it myself as I go much deeper in my understanding as well with each decade of practice. So we'll be starting with pictures again. And that was the wrong slide to start with. Okay. So, as you know, I'm often sitting out contemplating nature, and I find it tremendously helpful because it is less conceptual. It's still conceptual, but it's less conceptual than thinking in terms of words and philosophical statements. Okay, so, we know that all the traditions and all the lineages use nature for this same purpose. There are things that we can understand using an example, a demonstration. And what I was contemplating this week was seeing how the sky becomes the ocean, how a cloud arises from the ocean. So we can think of the ocean as samsara and the mist as it's arising as the bodhisattva path that is shedding a lot of the confusion of samsara, then the cloud fulfilling the bodhisattva perspective, and then full enlightenment being the all-inclusive space that holds the ocean, the mist, the clouds, and the union of all of those functions. And it's a tremendous example of the concept that we've been talking about in terms of form is emptiness, emptiness is form. So we see the ocean as something distinctly separate. We see the sky as a distinctly separate thing. And then we can observe the ocean becoming a cloud, and the cloud becoming dissolved into the sky, that complete interpenetration, interbeing, interdependence. And something about seeing it demonstrated right in front of us is different than reading about it. Especially in the bottom picture, you can see first the clouds sitting on top of the ocean and then moving up into the sky. So when I was talking last week about the Dharma being something that we have to hold on to lightly, not grasp, and how there are teachings about the relative and teachings about the absolute, they don't actually contradict each other. So if we're thinking of climbing a ladder, we have to let go of the first step in order to move to the next rung. We can't do that without the first step. So the first rung of the ladder doesn't contradict the second rung of the ladder. It's just that your mind starts opening to a different perspective, and there are teachings that are suitable for each perspective. They don't contradict each other, but if we hold on to one and grasp it tightly, we can't begin to open to the next level, the next understanding. So when we're swimming in the ocean of samsara, sometimes feeling like we're drowning in the ocean of samsara, we need the teachings that apply to the depths of samsara. And the Four Noble Truths are a very clear way of understanding why samsara is suffering, what is the cause. We understand how our own ignorance creates a me and mine. That mine leads to afflictive emotions, poisonous emotions, pride, envy, greed, anger, attachment, and aversion. And then the truth of the path and the truth of cessation, we experience as we apply the Dharma to our lives. As we become less confused, less ruled by afflictive emotions, we start to see how our understanding of samsara also can lead to actions that are the pathway out of samsara. And as we become more like the mist, we start to see there are teachings that really are primarily addressing the perspectives and views we hold. Once our conduct is cleared up, we're not harming others, we're not harming ourselves, then it becomes much more about the perspective we're holding and what we're understanding about the truth of the Dharma. So His Holiness Chetsang Rinpoche gave a talk a long time ago about the Heart Sutra, and he put it very simply. He was saying it's first understanding the relative, and it can be likened to a physical illness. If we have a cold, then we go to the doctor, we take certain medicines, and then the cold is gone. The cold never inherently existed. It was due to causes and conditions, and the medicine cured the cold, and then it's absolutely gone. It's not there anymore. It was impermanent. So relative reality and the Four Noble Truths are really applied effectively to seeing that the suffering experienced in samsara is impermanent due to arising of causes and conditions propelled by a ignorant view that reifies the I and then acts, causing us to go repeatedly in samsara, life after life after life. When we are applying the Dharma, the medicine for the cold, it is the teachings that help us understand that we create this I and it never was inherently existing. And that frees us from the depths of samsara. So we were looking at the wheel of samsara, the wheel of interdependent origination, about how our habits keep us trapped in this wheel, but the very first one is ignorance. When we eliminate that ignorance, that whole wheel falls apart. It doesn't function anymore. If you've ever overcome any aspect of addiction, you start to see that. I mentioned last week that in my 20s, I was addicted to smoking. So there was that seeing the cigarette, feeling desire for the cigarette, thinking it's going to bring me happiness, picking the cigarette up, smoking the cigarette, thereby increasing the addictive pattern and increasing suffering. Once I learned that it was all due to a mental misperception of what brings happiness, the cigarette as an object loses its power altogether. And that whole series of steps disappears relative to the cigarette. And the desire for that particular object is absolutely gone. So samsara and the suffering of samsara just falls apart. My favorite Shantideva quote: "For all anxiety and fear, all suffering in boundless measure, their source and wellspring is the mind itself." So once we begin to understand that and leave confused views about what brings happiness, about this dominant misperception of I that rules us, we become lighter and lighter. Then we're more like the mist. So the way the Four Noble Truths function when we're on the Bodhisattva path is seeing the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths. The truth of the path, according to Karl Buhnholzer, is to rest in meditative equipoise, realizing the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths, including the emptiness of that non-dual wisdom. So the Four Noble Truths function in a different way than how they functioned when we were swimming in samsara. The stages of the path don't contradict each other, but there's a different perspective and teachings that apply to that perspective. And we get more and more flexible. Eventually, if we're leaving conceptual wisdom or conceptual understanding for non-dual wisdom, we have to leave all views because they're all conceptual. So this flexibility of mind is very important, and this capacity to see, okay, we're really talking about mind and perspective. The Heart Sutra is all about opening our perspective. I want to give you one quote one verse from the Ganges Mahamudra, though darkness gathers for 1,000 eons, a single light dispels it all. Likewise, one moment of sheer clarity dispels the ignorance, evil, and confusion of 1,000 eons. So let's really take this in. The ocean, the mists, the clouds, and the space that holds everything. The Dharma being so flexible that it addresses what's needed at each stage in non-contradictory ways, but different ways. Probably you have something like my smoking experience, or you can think of the earlier example. We've all had colds, and then the cold is completely gone. But if you can call to mind a view or a perspective that has completely shifted through the Dharma and has demonstrated impermanence in such a way that it is now not part of your mind stream anymore, that you've really seen the impermanence of some aspect of samsara, and for you it's gone. And if you could apply the Four Noble Truths, seeing the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths that helped with that perspective and now demonstrates the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths, because relative to that particular situation or object, since it's not there, it doesn't need a path anymore. Since it's not there, it's not causing you suffering. It doesn't have an origin of suffering. Let's give ourselves a moment to contemplate that, and I'll put the Four Noble Truths on the screen. So, bringing to mind a particular way you've worked with the Dharma relative to a thought, an addiction, an attraction, how you've released yourself. You know, they use such descriptive words, from the shackles, the chains of that particular aspect of the ocean of samsara. And how now, from the perspective of the cloud or the mist, that suffering is gone. It's back in the ocean. The origin is back in the ocean. The path is back in the ocean. So if we search for it, we couldn't find an inherently existing object or memory or quality of addiction. Freed from that, you're more like the mist or the cloud. And how each aspect of freedom that we find, each shedding of an impermanent afflictive emotion, makes us freer and freer like the cloud. And there may be some that are totally gone. I'm not sure I could find one that's totally gone, still on the path of learning the Dharma. But my addiction to smoking is totally gone. So just think about the shifting perspective of the Four Noble Truths. So I'd like to give folks time to talk to each other just for a moment about this. So I'll open the chat rooms. If I can remember. Oh, there we are. Okay. For those who are not joining, continue to contemplate, and I'm just going to put up the picture of the mist again. Samsara, inseparable from nirvana, and the absolute being the space that holds both. The myths reflecting the path, and what is learned and needed along the path as one's perspective changes, also changes. When you're drowning in desire and anger, you need the teachings that help you calm the mind and tame the mind. When you've freed yourself, you need the teachings on how to abide. In nature of mind. Eventually, there's no such thing as abiding. There's just the isness, the presence. So for those who are watching later on YouTube, we'll close now. Bodhicitta, excellent and precious mind, where it is unborn, may it arise. Where it is born, may it not decline, but ever increase higher and higher.